Ich möchte nun unseren ersten Vortragenden Magnus Wästberg vorstellen. Er gründete 2008 das Beleuchtungsunternehmen Wästberg und setzte sich damit zum Ziel, durch Licht Wohlbefinden zu schaffen. Inspiriert von Paul Klees Zitat "Ein Auge sieht, das andere fühlt", begann er zu verstehen, dass gutes Licht auch unsere Emotionen und Bedürfnisse ansprechen sollte. Extra aus Schweden für uns angereist und deswegen wird er seinen Vortrag auch auf Englisch halten. A big welcome to Magnus Wästberg. Thank you.
Good evening, and thank you very much for having me. Pleasure. And thank you all for coming, not only to see me, but to visit Graz and XL. Yeah, my name is Magnus Wästberg, and just as said, I founded the lighting company Wästberg 16 years ago, 2008. And tonight I wanted to use this time that I'm stealing from you to just shortly tell you about why I started the company, because of course it is anything but a given that the world needs another lighting company. So why did I think that it did? And yeah, that all comes down to a philosophy about light that I have, and how can you use this philosophy to create lighting solutions and lighting products or lamps. So to do that, I need to start by telling you a little bit about where I come from. Because I grew up with light and lighting. I grew up in Sweden, and my father was a lighting producer. So from a very young age, light and lighting was a very big and important part of my life. And now later in life, I have come to realize that this was really formative, and it was something that really made me into who I am and what I do, obviously. As I said already, from a young age, this became a part of my life, and there's so many ways that was, and there's so many things that I can remember now looking back, and that was formative. And one of the things that I really strongly remember was our yearly summer routine, which would be that we would pack the car in the south of Sweden where we lived, and then we will drive the whole family throughout Europe to visit subsidiaries and designers and factories, and everywhere we came, my mother and my sister, they would run off to the city to shop or do sightseeing or something. But I really loved coming with my father, so I would come with him to his meetings and his factories visits, and I loved it. And I especially loved when I was able to sit with the men and the women in the meeting, and they were sketching and discussing and drawing. And then next year when you arrived, in the next summer vacation, there was a product. And I could really understand that there was something almost magical going on there, that they were turning ideas and thoughts into solutions and products. And even if I was obviously not present throughout the year, it was still like this really strong feeling of something really magical happening there. So this is something that has really been with me since. But then I decided to really not go down my father's footsteps, so I studied business administration at university and pursued a very short career as a management consultant. I really hated it from day one. So I had an early and very severe career crisis, and I'm very, very thankful and happy that I chose with the heart and not with my brain at that point of time. So, because design, architecture, interior design was always my big passion ever since I was a kid. And growing up and studying, and even during my short career as a management consultant, my biggest interest was architecture design, interior design. I was reading all the books I could, all the magazines about the architecture design. So this was really my passion, and I wanted to work with my passion. So I decided that, maybe it's a good idea to work with my father and to learn the lighting industry, because of course lighting is just yet another dimension of design and architecture. So I asked him if I could come work with him to learn the industry, and then with the ambition to start my own company one day. And he really thought I was totally crazy to do that, but eventually he agreed. So I started working with my father. And here started the journey, because from day one, traveling with my father, visiting mostly offices, and obviously then lighting solutions, I was immediately struck by the fact that I thought that, these solutions does not make me feel very well. I know that they are made according to all the rules and the regulations and the norms, but they do not make me feel good. How is that possible? On the opposite, many times they actually made me feel quite bad. It was a feeling of being harsh and unwelcoming and unfriendly and actually making me feel quite unpleasant. And I started thinking, how is this possible? And of course, the rules and the regulations and the norms, they are addressing measurable qualities. And that's fantastic. Lighting is to a large extent measurable. And this is, of course, very helpful, that we can define and decide what light is. But there is also a large set of qualities about light that are unmeasurable. And I think that we as human beings, we tend to address the unmeasurable, the measurables, because this is easy to define and talk about. And we try to shy away from the unmeasurables, because these are not so easy to talk about. They are not so easy to define and not so easy to approach. And this is what really started interesting me, because the measurables, the lux and the lumens and the this and the that, we know about. But how much do we know about the unmeasurables? And what are the unmeasurables? And this is what interests me. And here my journey started for real. And here starts also the company. And to start talking about the company, I have to start in a place where we all come from. Namely, the fact that we all have reptile brains. Meaning that sometimes we react and feel without thinking. And this is because we are still governed by instincts that are more than 1 million years old. And about 1 million years old is also our relationship to light in the shape of a fire. And if we start thinking about that, 1 million years, we have only lived with electrical light a little bit more than 100 years. So that's like a blink of an eye in terms of human evolution. And 1 million years with the fire, and if we start thinking about that, the fire, what was that relationship? Then quite soon we understand, or at least I started thinking in terms of fire. It was not only something that made darkness into light or night into day, which, generalizing a bit, electrical light has become. The fire was something that meant a lot more to us. It had many more dimensions to us. It was something that scared animals away. It was something that kept us warm. It was something that kept us safe. It was something that brought us together. So fire had so many meanings to us. And if we think further about it, fire was something that made it possible for us to heat food. And eating warm food developed our brains. Fire was also something that initially was placed probably in the middle of a cave. And when the flames started dancing on the wall, we started painting on the wall, and that's how art was born. The fire, we gathered around the fire in the cave telling stories to each other, and that's how literature was born. So the more you think about the fire and the meaning of the fire and our relationship to light in the shape of a fire, you start to understand that fire is really the facilitator of a lot of the things that makes us human beings. And this, I think, has made it in a way that fire and our relationship to light in the shape of a fire is extremely deeply, almost hardwired within us. And this was the only artificial light we had for hundreds and hundreds of thousands of years. Until about a little bit more than 100 years ago, when electrical light came into our lives. And this man, a fellow Swede that I'm pretty sure that you don't know who this is. If there's someone who does, I'm super impressed. But no. This is August Strindberg. August Strindberg is probably the most important and famous writer and painter, actually, also playwright in Sweden. And he was a very controversial man. He had a lot of ideas about things. But one thing he said when electrical lighting came was that electric light will make people work themselves to death. And as we all know, to some extent, he was right. And now, I actually, only the other day, I read an article by a Swedish, I think it was a chemistry professor, actually. But he made a big study and wrote a book about our relationship, about sleep. And he said, in the last 100 years, in general, humans lost 2 hours of sleep, which is a huge amount of loss. Anyways, the question now is if it is the electrical part or the light part that is to blame. And to me, it is pretty obvious that it is the electrical part, technology. And please do not misunderstand me. I love technology. Technology is in the heart of everything we do at Wästberg. It is a facilitator of fantastic things. It has meant, as we all know, enormous things to humankind. But what I think is many times a problem is that we don't realize that what is technically possible is not always humanly preferable. And I think this is where it goes wrong many times. And for us and for me, this is really, really important to have as a guiding star that what's technically possible is not always humanly preferable. And let me give you a simple example of that. The microwave oven. So, only because we found a technical way of heating food fast, it doesn't mean it made things better, right? Many times, or in many respects, it made it worse. We lost a lot of things. We lost nutrition, texture, taste, color, but we also lost rituals. The ritual of cooking, the ritual of taking care of the produce, the ritual of preparing the produce. And I think when we start to rationalize away too many things that makes us human beings, like rituals, then we are really on a dangerous path. And then we are really, again, challenging what is actually making us human beings. And this is many times what technology unfortunately does, if you don't think about why you use technology and for what. This was the kind of thinking that was running around in my head. I just turned 30 and I was very ambitious and pretentious, so of course I wrote the manifesto. And I called it Lamps for Neanderthal Man. It was printed in 600 copies, and I only have 2 left, so there are some out there. Of course, the name Lamps for Neanderthal Man is addressing exactly what I was just talking about. So our human need for light maybe didn't change that much in the last hundreds and thousands of years, but our relationship to light changed immensely. And maybe something got lost there. I started thinking about, how do I turn these thoughts into something concrete, something like a lighting philosophy? And I was not very successful in those thinkings until I luckily stumbled upon the quote that was mentioned here before, which was not by me, but by a very, very clever man and a fantastic man called Paul Klee, the artist. He once said that one eye sees, the other feels. And obviously he wasn't talking about light, he was probably talking about the way we view the world or something. But for me, this was the perfect and very elegant and reduced way of explaining my idea about light and my philosophy about light. For me, this means that one eye sees and the other eye feels, means that we have a physical need for light, the eye that sees, and an emotional need for light, the eye that feels. And this means that we need, for the eye that sees, the physical needs, we need to address measurable qualities. And for the eye that feels, the emotional needs, we need to address the immeasurable qualities of light. And now we are back where I started. Because as I said, the measurables we know quite a lot about, so these we can address. But the unmeasurables, the immeasurables, what are they? How can we address them? And here comes the fire. Because I think that the immeasurable qualities of light is very, very closely linked to our deeply inherited and hardwired relationship to light in the shape of a fire. And if we can understand and learn what that is and define what that is, then I think we can make a lot better lighting solutions. So that made me start think about what defined, what is our, or was our relationship to light in the shape of a fire. Well, for me, it was three things mainly, or fundamentally. One was that fire was a light source that was close to us. It was a light source that we could control. And it was a light source that was shining for us and not on us. And now think about these office environments and lighting solutions that I was visiting with my father when I started working with him, that I really didn't feel well in. They are exactly the opposite to this. If you walk into a modern office lighting solution, it would normally be a solution where the light and the fixtures are not close to us. We cannot control them, even if we know that we have different physical needs. If you are 16 or 65, if you have good eyesight, bad eyesight, we have different physical needs. We also have different emotional preferences for light. But still, everyone gets the same. And if you think about a modern office lighting solution, it would normally light on us and not for us. So in a way, because of chasing technology and not thinking about the fact that what's technically possible is not always humanly preferable or addressing our human needs, we have created solutions that, in my opinion, are going the quite opposite way or creating the quite opposite thing than we as human beings actually emotionally, unmeasurably prefer. But by creating solutions with these qualities or functions or values as a guiding star, I think we can very easily create lighting solutions on a human scale with human unmeasurable qualities. Still a bit abstract, maybe. So I thought, how can I really turn this into something more concrete and understandable? And again, I was lucky to stumble on a man that was a lot more clever than I am. And this time it was a man called Kelly, Richard Kelly. And if you're in the lighting business or working with light, you're probably familiar with Richard Kelly. If not, Richard Kelly he's sometimes referred to as the first real lighting designer, meaning that he was working with light not only as something quantitative, but also something qualitative. And he was working in the 50s, 60s, predominantly in the US, and collaborating with some of the really most important architects of that time, like Mies van der Rohe and Philip Johnson. And he was actually also the lighting designer behind one of my favorite modernist building, which is the Mies van der Rohe's Seagram building in New York. Anyways, in the 1950s, 1953, I think, he wrote an article in an architectural magazine where he founded what he called the 3 tenets of light. And that means that with these 3 tenets, or I rather look at them as layers, with these 3 layers of light, you can create a holistic lighting solution on a human scale. What you need is 3 kinds of light: ambient luminescence, focal glow, and what Richard Kelly called play of brilliance, and what I call atmospheric accents. Shortly, ambient luminescence you can think about as the light on a foggy lake, on a foggy lake in the morning. You know, a diffused, milky, non-directional light without any shadows, like a base layer of light. The second, and maybe at least I think most important one, is focal glow. In terms of focal glow, you can imagine a dark stage with just one actor, and then boom, one spotlight on the actor. A light that gives direction, a light that sorts out what is important from what is not important, a light that creates contrasts. And Richard Kelly talked about focal glow as the campfire of all times, coming back to the fire. And last but not the least, Richard Kelly was talking about play of brilliance, and he was referring to Times Square at night with blinking colorful lights. And for me, that's not really what creates a nice emotional atmospherical quality. So I'm talking, I created my own little category here, and I called it atmospheric accents. And for me, in its most essential basic form, it is a candle. It is a light source, a layer that is there to create or amplify the emotional qualities of the lighting solution. So by using these 3 kinds of light, these 3 layers, you can very easily, but it's fairly easy to create a holistic human lighting solution. Time is running. Do I have 5 more minutes? Yeah. So I will then just very quickly show you how we transform this philosophy into products. And for me, it's very important to stress that one of the biggest problems I saw growing up and working in the lighting industry was that it was very seldom that the products, the lamps, the fixtures were holistic products. And I think if I decide that I have the right to create a new product, which means using resources, people's time, money, natural resources, you really have to make sure that you do the best you can from a holistical point of view on every way you can. And for me, a holistic product is functional, measurable values, qualities, emotional, immeasurable qualities. It is also sustainable, obviously. And last but not the least, it has to be value for money. And I think if you cannot supply or reach all these qualities or perform on all these qualities, it is really not holistic and a good product. It might do some things good, but it's not a holistic and really good product. And I think the problem with many times is that why companies do not manage to do holistic products is actually the product development process in itself. And therefore, I spent a lot of time thinking about how to develop products. And just to give you a short example of how I have experienced that products come about, I normally saw three scenarios. One that was like my father, for example. They always started from a set of components. They went to fairs. They went home with bags full of components by suppliers. They threw them all on a table, and then they would sit around the table and they would say, what do we do with this now? And this is, for me, not the way to approach product development in order to create a holistic product. The second thing, or second process that is quite common is that the designer approaches a company, especially in the more decorative part of the business, with a finished concept or product, saying, hey, I designed this really nice product, would you like to produce it? And again, it's very hard, I think, to accomplish a holistic product when you have this, let's say, one-dimensional process without coming together and contributing. And last but not the least, copying. We all know it's really common, unfortunately. And again, this is not progressive in any way. So I spent a lot of time thinking about how do you actually design a good product development process. And for me, I have come to the conclusion that it needs, first and foremost, and this is many times lacking, a relevant purpose, a clear and relevant purpose. So when we set out to do a product, it really needs to solve a problem in a new way or solve a problem that has not been solved before. But first and foremost, it has to be a relevant purpose. Secondly, in my opinion, maybe it's because I'm Scandinavian, but I really strongly believe in a collaborative process where people come together and make 1 + 1 become 11. And last but not the least, you have to care. It's so easy to stop halfway and think that this is good enough now or something. But to make a truly holistic product, you really need to care enough to make the effort to go all the way to create all these 4 values or qualities. So this is very important to us. And this is also why we always start in a purpose or a solution or a problem that comes from the company. And then we decide which designer to work with, because we think that this designer is the perfect designer to work on this specific topic. And then we work together from day one, hand in hand, developing the product in a very, very close and collaborative process. I'm finishing here with showing you 2 very recent fruits of these collaborations. And there is normally sound, but we don't need that, so that's fine. Then I can talk instead. That's good. Efficient. This is what we call the Raw collection. And this is actually not a product. It is a finish, or actually the lack of a finish. This is a thing, or an initiative that I and the company actually did 10 years ago. I thought it would be very interesting at the Stockholm Furniture Fair 2014 to show our full collection without any paint, lacquer, or treatment at all. It was a disaster. No one liked it. It was like, did you not finish for the fair? So I really forgot about that whole thing. But then me and some colleagues some years ago started talking about the fact that maybe now it's actually time to try this again, because so much things has happened in the last 10 years. And to be honest, 10 years ago it was more of an aesthetical thing. But now, obviously, it is first and foremost an ambition to produce in a more sustainable way. Because if you don't paint, if you don't lacquer, of course you use a lot less chemicals, a lot less energy. And of course, at the end of the product's hopefully very, 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 very long life cycle, it is a lot easier to recycle. So from a sustainability point of view, it's kind of a no-brainer. And I still think it is a super, super nice thing also from an aesthetical point of view. Because what's happening when you don't paint, also an industrially produced part, a die-casted aluminium part, is super beautiful. And if you tumble that die-casted aluminium part, it gets this really rich and deep metal feeling. And I think it's almost like giving industrially produced parts the properties of natural materials, like a stone or a piece of leather, because it will age, it will get a bit of fingerprint, and it will oxidize. So again, it becomes more of a natural feeling. So I think it's a no-brainer. It's sustainable and it's super, super nice. This is a new product that we developed together with David Chipperfield, which is what I call a hybrid lamp. It is portable, yes, but first and foremost, it is a proper lamp. I can tell you more about that later if you want to. Last thing is just quickly, I want to introduce you to some of my some people that are very, very important to me. Namely the designers that I have developed the products together with. So this is Sir David Chipperfield. We've worked together for more than 15 years now, creating quite some products. And yes, we do produce candlesticks and oil lamps, because fire is a very important and relevant part also of a modern lighting solution. You cannot light offices with candles, of course, but restaurants, homes, etc. Fire is still a super important part of a lighting solution. Claes och Koivisto Rune, Swedish architects and designers. Kim Collin and Sam Hecht, she's American architect and he is a British industrial designer. Ilse Crawford, who was the first designer that I work with, and actually she's not a designer by training, she's a journalist. She founded L Decoration, which is now a global title. So I did my first product and she did her first product together, and it was quite an interesting process, I must say. Jasper Morrison, one of my favorite industrial designers. John Pawson, British. He's actually not formally an architect, but he's working as an architect. He was the reason why I first got interested into and passionate about architecture and design. So it's very nice to work together now, all these years later. Ingegerd Roman, she's the newest member of our design collective, but she's also the oldest member. She turned 80 last year, but still going strong. She's the queen of Scandinavian glass and ceramic craft and design. Oki Sato, founder of Nendo, trained as an architect, but probably most known for his huge catalog of products. Inga Sampé, French designer that I also work with for many years. Tam och Videgård, Bolle Tam och Martin Videgård, two Swedish architects that are making a name for themselves internationally. And Dirk Winkel, who is someone that I met when he was still a student at Royal College of Art. And together we have since developed some of our, in my opinion, maybe best and definitely best-selling products. And we won a lot of awards, yes. Thank you. Thank you very much.